Now, is the cost of living crisis finally easing? Well, inflation in shop prices has dropped to its lowest level since December 2021 as shoppers cut down on spending.
Well, joining us now, Chief Economist and Advisor at CEB, Vicky Pryce. Vicky, good morning to you.
Good morning.
This is all painted very good. All the trouble's over. We're all going to be fine and whatever it is. But we're still paying more than we ever did before. What do you make of it all?
Oh, it's absolutely true that things are still much more expensive than they used to be because we're talking about inflation coming down rather than necessarily prices falling. In some cases, they have. We have seen the odd month when even clothing prices go down.
Try that, Claire.
Sorry, I suppose you can hear me still.
Yes. Yeah.
You can. What we're seeing right now is that the food price inflation slowdown, which has taken place, which is quite significant, is very good news, of course, for the consumer. But we're talking about prices having increased by 1.3% year on year in the last month, whereas a year ago, they were rising by about 15%. So that's a big, big change. The question is what happens next? I mean, some of the food prices that we have seen have come down, as I said, it's been the odd month when that has been the case. And even this time, we've seen chocolate prices coming down, despite the fact that cocoa prices have gone up very significantly over the past few months, because retailers are very, very keen, and supermarkets, to ensure that everyone buys or bought those Easter chocolates, of course, which are so important for this time of the year. But what surprises me is that, good news in many ways, but if you look at international food prices, they have been coming down for almost 2 years now, since about April 2022. Before that, we saw a huge increase in prices, partly because of post-COVID supply issues, and then, of course, because of the energy price increases that we've seen, which affected everything. But food prices have been coming down actually, not just in terms of inflation, but the actual price of most foods has been coming down internationally. But we haven't really seen that until just now being reflected in what we're paying at the shops. And that, of course, is because costs are still reasonably high for supermarkets. They had to pay a lot more in terms of wages, still some transport costs and so on. But overall, I think we could have expected by now to see prices falling rather than just inflation falling. And that is something which I think we need to be looking at for the future as well.
And Vicky, what is that delay about? Because it is that age-old thing, isn't it, of prices shooting up like a rocket and coming down like a feather. And that, it could be in part down to transport and wages, as you say. But how much is food inflation baked in at this point?
There was a concern, and there has been a concern, probably still is a concern, about whether supermarkets have been profiteering from this. And we've also seen sort of shrink inflation in the sense that we've had the sizes of particular items being reduced in an effort to ensure that prices don't perhaps rise as much when people are still able to buy the goods, although there's less of it in the packets or the boxes that they're buying, or in the wrapping that they're getting from supermarkets. So there was a bit of an issue about whether the fact that there is high inflation is also encouraged shops to just raise their prices arbitrarily. But if you look at the profit margins of supermarkets, they're not that great. So perhaps that argument isn't that big. But I think wages do matter. You touched on that yourself. We're about to see minimum wage go up quite significantly. Supermarkets and lots of other shops are going to have to bear that. And transport is still expensive. We've seen, for example, in the last month at the pumps that petrol prices have gone up. So that adds quite considerably to just transporting things from one place to another. So logistics matters. We now, of course, have shipments being affected because of what's going on in the Red Sea. So there are concerns also what's going to happen to energy prices in the future too, which is going to be an issue. So a number of things that are affecting it. But what we're also seeing, though, is a lot more competition taking place. If you look at other items, not just necessarily food, and you look at retail overall, you've seen a number of items come down because everyone realizes that shoppers aren't going to go in, given that they have so many other expenses to bear right now, including loads of service costs going up. April is the month when everything is increasing quite substantially for people, whether it is your council tax, water bills, whether it is your road tax, that you have to pay, whether it is stamps that are going up quite significantly. So all that goes up. So supermarkets and other retailers are quite aware that there is a danger that consumers are just not going to go into the shops, so be prepared to buy the things that they were buying before and will not be able to afford the higher prices that perhaps they would like to see happen to meet some of those, particularly wage costs that they're going to have to deal with. So yeah, it's a tricky time for them. And we've seen, in fact, retail sales stagnant over the last month. So obviously everyone is hoping that that is only temporary and things might improve.
Vicky Pryce, thank you very much indeed. Vicky is a top economist there. Thank you for your views.